He's editor-in-chief of Breitbart News and a New York Times best-selling author. And on this podcast, he brings deep research, prescient analysis, and world-class guests. He's Alex Marlow, and this is the Alex Marlow Show.
All right, welcome to a very interesting Alex Marlow Show, and interesting in the sense that we are doing now, this is our third time trying to record the show. I'll tell you, we have a great interview later on with Lilley, who is one of the most knowledgeable people about all things Canada. You're going to hear from him. He's a terrific guy, and we taped that a couple of days ago because he is the same theory that I do, that all of Trump's foreign policies are come back to China, which is a essential point. I think if you look at the Panama Canal, if you look at his negotiations with Ukraine and Russia, which we'll get to in a minute, if you look at him trying to get Greenland for strategic purposes, China's making encroachments into the Antarctic. All this stuff is about China. All of his pressure he's placing on Canada and Mexico. All this has to do with stopping fentanyl, which a lot of it originates in China. Trump is trying to keep China at bay, and he's doing it in a very creative way with a wide global, a full spectrum strategy. And that's what we talk about. And it becomes very apropos because something broke out in the news while we were recording a second time, doing our second draft of the show earlier today, which you'd have to see it to believe it. You've all probably seen it at this point on this Hawaiian Shirt Friday. I want to play a little bit of it. We got some clips. This is coming from the Oval Office with the president. I got this JD Vance one. Let's play this first.
Kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr.
are not
President,
strong...
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come to the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the President for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to...
Okay, so some things to note so far if you're watching this. I'm going to have to be very concise here because there's a lot going on, and this is a developing situation, a moving target here. But Vance is calling out Zelensky for not quickly trying to get to a peaceful situation. He is noting correctly that Ukrainian conscripts are getting older. The average person on the front lines is in their mid-40s now at this point in Ukraine, and that's because they've lost so many people. They've lost hundreds of thousands of people, and yet the war goes on. Why does it go on? Because they're trying to win, obviously, but they also would like to keep the gravy train going from the United States and elsewhere, and Zelensky knows this. Zelensky is in his signature Al Sharpton tracksuit. Vance and Trump are in their usual sharp suits. They often wear, they're in the Oval Office, so hallowed ground in American life. And they're doing this in front of the media. This was initially supposed to be a signing of the mineral deal situation where everyone's going to smile for the camera and we're going to start moving this negotiation towards a peace. We've spoken at great length about the mineral deal that was supposed to get signed today. Spoiler alert, has not gotten signed as of the time we're recording this. And it's one of these things where this was a creative move Trump had made for America to save face, for America to start becoming a real peace broker in the region without expending any more capital. Actually, we'll get capital. And of course, no blood spilled by Americans in particular. So Trump had come up with that, and Vance is calling out Zelensky for not being sufficiently deferential to Trump. And the reason why Zelensky's not doing this is because he's in front of the media that generally prefers Zelensky over Trump. This is a media op, and that's what's going on. Also noteworthy, and this will come up momentarily, Zelensky does not have his translator. He often has a translator here. He's going on his own. He's flying solo. A big mistake, as we're about to see.
Been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have.
I have been to...
Come once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military?
We have problems.
And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless.
You don't know
God
that.
bless. You
Don't-
will not
you
have.
gotta-
So why does he add, Zelensky add, you have a nice ocean, but you would not, you might feel it in the future? What is he saying? Is that a threat? And so this is where I start wondering if Zelensky not having his translator is causing him problems here. He's behaving very badly, but I will say it doesn't feel like he's got the vocabulary to really articulate himself the way he needs to with Trump and Vance. It sounds like, well, you're going to start feeling the heat, but if you didn't have an ocean, people would be trying to blow you up. I don't think that's true. I don't think that's the nature of our diplomacy.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because
I'm
you're in no
answering on this
position to
question.
dictate that.
That's
Remember
exactly
this.
what
I'm not
You're
dictating.
in no position to dictate what we're going to feel.
You
We're
will-
going to feel very
you will
good.
feel influenced.
We're going to feel
So
very
Zelensky's body language here, he just sort of raises eyebrows in a very strange way. Trump is sitting up straight on the edge of his seat here. He's trying to be the commanding presence. And this is my favorite line, Trump's line, you're in no position to tell us how to feel. This is not an emotional thing. We're not talking about how the war started. Sure, Putin invaded. We're not talking about necessarily whether or not you bilked us, Zelensky, and ripped us off, because you did. All we're talking about now is how do we get to a peace? And step one is signing this mineral deal. That's number one. That's what we're here to do today. And you're causing a lot of problems right now. Let's go on.
very
I'm
good and
telling
very
you,
strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed
From the
yourself
very-
to be in a
from
very
the very
bad position,
beginning
and he
of the
happens
war.
to be right about
From the
it.
very beginning of the war.
You're not
Mr.
in a good
Brown,
position.
I
You
was
don't have
in
the
a-
cards right now. With us, you start having
Trump is
cards.
right. He's not in a very good position. Zelensky does not have the cards. And Zelensky wants to go back to the beginning of the war. We do not want to go back to the beginning of the war. We do not want to talk about emotions. We want to talk about bringing a peace, a lasting peace. That's the point.
Playing cards.
Right now, you don't.
I'm very
You're playing
serious,
cards.
Mr. President.
You're
I'm
playing
very
cards.
serious.
You're
I'm
gambling
the
with the
president
lives
in
of
war.
millions of people.
You think-
You're gambling with World War
What do you-
III.
what do you
You're
think about?
gambling with
What do you
World
think
War
about?
III. And
You-
what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. It's
with
back
all
to you.
respect to your
Far
country.
more than a lot of people said
I'm very
they
respect.
should have.
Have you said thank you once? This
A lot
entire
of
meeting?
times.
No, in this
Even
entire meeting,
today.
have you said thank you.
Even today.
You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States
what
of
you're speaking
America
about.
and the president who's trying to save your country.
I love this. It's just my favorite JD Vance moment maybe ever. I thought that was terrific. Absolutely magnificent from him defending our country in a very calm way. The other thing that Zelensky is witnessing is Vance is explaining some things that are, we understand fundamentally much of the establishment of the American media and electorate might not get, which is that Zelensky went to Pennsylvania to campaign for Democrats in the run up to 2024. He went to Pennsylvania, a swing state, the crucial swing state, arguably. Trump won by enough that he didn't need it in the end. But we thought Pennsylvania was going to be the state. I said whoever wins Pennsylvania will win the election. And Zelensky went there to campaign for Democrats because he knew if Democrats win, the gravy train would come. Elsewhere in the interview or in the event, whatever you want to call it, the Oval Office meeting, Vance notes that Trump sold Javelin missiles to Ukraine proactively before Putin had invaded. Biden had not done that. Biden only got Ukraine weaponry after Putin had invaded. So Trump was actually a better friend to Ukraine than Biden was before, and certainly Obama was. I've explained this many, many times. Putin invaded, took the Crimea and Donbass under Obama. Trump came in. He took out Wagner troops in Syria. He worked against the pipeline. Sorry, Missy, you're gonna have to help me on this. Hold on, let me pull it up. I really need to have a snack. Get low blood sugar here. Nord Stream, there we go. Okay. Trump tried to stop the Nord Stream pipeline, and Trump had crippled a lot of Russia's energy sector by drilling here, the Nord Stream issue as well. So many things that were done by Trump to be tough on Russia. And Zelensky has not been sufficiently grateful, at least according to Vance. Now, I do think, to be honest, Zelensky has said thank you a couple times. I think that's true. But I think overall, he's not been sufficiently grateful. He was not behaving in a grateful way. And I just don't understand why he did this. He needed to be totally on the same page as Trump. He needed to act like Trump's ally, and he couldn't do it. I'm wondering if there's a language issue. I'm serious about this, that he maybe didn't have the words. Maybe he wasn't clear on what was exactly being said to him. But this did not need to get this contentious. It does not matter how the war started. It does not matter how we feel. All that matters is whether or not we start signing, getting to a peace, starting with this mineral deal. And it made me wonder if maybe the mineral deal is not real. Now, if you read European media, if you hear from the EU, they would have you believe that Ukraine is very rich in these rare earths. And that's stuff that we can use for technology. It's have a lot of value. And it counters China, which is dominant in rare earths. So that was the point of this summit, was to sign a rare earths deal, which would get America a lot of access to revenue from Ukrainian rare earths in exchange for us basically helping to broker a peace. That sounded amazing to me. I loved it. I thought it was a genius move by Trump, as I've explained on basically every show this week. But Russian media would tell you that Ukraine doesn't have as many rare earths. Now, I don't trust Russian media, but I don't really trust the EU either. So maybe there's something that we're missing. Maybe the rare earth deal wasn't quite as good, and maybe Zelensky knew it. And I don't know. Maybe he thought that perhaps he was blowing himself up for some reason. But he did blow himself up. He was ultimately kicked out of the White House, removed from the White House, at least according to reports. The deal was not signed. And now he is putting out statements to sort of save face. Trump essentially put him on timeout. Ukraine was calling for some sort of a reset, according to reports that are breaking right now. And Trump said he's got to go and come back when he's ready to work on a peace. He didn't like the body language. He didn't like the language that Zelensky was using. And I love to see the strength, the muscularity from Vance and Trump, and great arguments. Trump's point where he swept in and said, don't tell us how to feel. Vance's points about Pennsylvania, Vance's points about the javelin. These are terrific points. We're in terrific hands in this country. The bad news is I don't know where this goes from here. It is American media is, of course, siding with Zelensky to this point. But a lot of those rhino squishes, neocons are admitting that Trump is the upper hand here and Zelensky needed to behave better, which he did. So I don't know if I've ever seen anything like it, someone lighting themselves on fire like this as a world leader. Zelensky was a comedian, but he was president of his country for 4 years, and he's been dictator for the last year. I say that only somewhat tongue-in-cheek. But he needed to handle this much better, and he did not. So that is remarkable because we don't know where this is going to go. We don't know if things will get worse or better because of this. Perhaps he puts his tail between his legs, comes back, says, I was wrong, made a mistake, got caught up in the heat of the moment. Maybe there's some sort of something lost in translation, literally, and I'm ready to broker a peace with Trump. And my bad. Mea maxima culpa. If he does that, perhaps things get better from here, but maybe they get worse. Maybe this war just goes on forever and Ukraine's on their own and America never gives them another penny and a lot more people die because of this, which would be a shame. That's not what we want. So absolutely fascinating stuff. I've got a big Fight Club interview. Oh, here's all the media. I'll just give it to you. My Fight Club is with Francis Martel. We break this down for 30 minutes at Breitbart News. I was on Charlie Kirk's show in all 3 hours talking about this and other topics. I was on a Newsmax show. I will be on Larry Kudlow's show. I'll be on Laura Ingram's show. So I'm all over the place talking about this stuff. Breitbart News will always have best-in-class coverage of these things. We're built for these sort of frenzied news cycles. We do love it. It is fun. I hope the world gets to be a more peaceful place because of it. I don't know for sure. But utterly sensational news to come out of the Oval Office today. I love the way Trump and Vance reacted, but let's see what comes from it. The weekend. So that means I'm going to be on my Solaire infrared grills at besthotgrill.com. The plan tonight, get the tri-tip going. It's birthday weekend here for Master Marlow Jr. Just turned 5 yesterday. So we're going to be having fun. We got family coming in to celebrate, and I want to get the weekend off to a good start. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my smoker out. I'm going to slow smoke it. I'm going to get that. It doesn't take very long with the tri-tip, maybe an hour and a half. And then I'm going to let it rest. And when it's nice and rested, I'm going to fire up that Solaire infrared grill, and I'm going to get the most unbelievable bark on top of that steak. It is going to be crispy sear, and it's going to taste perfect. And it's because I've got the hottest grill in the market, the Solaire infrared grill, besthotgrill.com, made in America, fantastic people, great product, and something that is a regular part of my routine. And I'm openly looking forward to spending Friday night with my Solaire grill. So you should too. They're not that expensive also. You get a small one. I got a small one. It gets the job done. You also get a huge one too if you feel like you got to cook 50 burgers at a time. I've got to meet the guy who cooks 50 burgers at a time because that's bold. Because we get the birthday party coming up on Sunday, and Miss Dr. Marlow doesn't want me standing over the grill the whole time. She wants me to help with other stuff. Then can I do the burgers? And she said, no, you cannot do the burgers. Maybe you can roll some hot dogs, but it's that's about it. That's all I can get away with. So more power to you. You can do 50 burgers at once. All right. Love hot AlexMarlow.com. Next up's Brian Lilley. Check it out. All right. President Trump is moving at lightning speed in his first weeks in office with executive orders, new policies, promises kept. It can be hard to keep up until now. Subscribe to the Trump Report. This daily email brings you highlights from the Oval Office right to your inbox 5 days a week. Get all the details on the administration's top actions that day with in-depth analysis. You stay up to date on what President Trump is doing to make America great again. Subscribe to the Trump Report today at salempodcastnetwork.com/Trump. That's salempodcastnetwork.com/Trump. Get that up-to-the-minute email every single day with Salem. All right. It's really nice to invite my friend Brian Lilley on the show. Brian is one of the most knowledgeable people about Canada, and I would say has of all the Canadian media personalities, probably the one who I think understands where we're coming from at Breitbart the best. He's a Toronto Sun columnist, and he also has Lilly Unleashed on YouTube, which is a YouTube show. And some of you might recognize him from the Sun News Network, which was sort of a Fox News equivalent that Canada had for a while. I would appear on that from time to time when I had no business being on, but they were always very kind to give me a shot. Brian, it's great to catch up with you. How are things going up there in the great state of Canada?
The great state of Canada. I live in Toronto now, and we got a snow dump, which we're not used to. So that and Trump's tariff threats are the only two things people are talking about. How bad the snow clearing is and how worried everyone is about the tariff situation. Maple Leafs are doing okay. Raptors are still losing, But the good news on the big national scale, we're getting rid of Justin Trudeau.
Yes, it's big.
Which is great. But some of what, I said this, I interviewed Steve Bannon a couple weeks ago when I was down in Washington. I said, your guy got rid of Trudeau for us. That's great, but you may be re-electing a Liberal government now. So that's the big worry. We've got global banker, former Goldman Sachs guy, UN guy, Mark Carney, looking to take over the leadership of the Liberal Party. And with a lot of fear about tariffs and trade war, the Liberals are suddenly popular again. The
main thing I want to get into is the tariffs and trade war, but it's no rush. So give me your take on just the state of general politics in Canada, because watching from afar, we're happy to see Trudeau go, but it's been Lucy with the football for us for many years here in America, where we get our hopes up that Canada's liberalism is going to subside and we're going to get some sort of a conservative governance, and it just doesn't seem to happen. Give us the 30,000 foot to kind of help an American audience understand.
Sure. So, we went hard left with Trudeau. We had Stephen Harper, who was great prime minister for 10 years, very knowledgeable guy. He was, he ran a kind of a middle-of-the-road conservative government. It wasn't as conservative as he was, because his view was, well, that's not where the population is, so I got to moderate myself a bit. And then he's in for 10 years, and we get this guy going around saying, sunny ways. That was Justin Trudeau. And he took over the Liberal Party, which used to be centrist, and took it hard left. We're talking AOC and the squad style stuff. Mm-hmm. It wasn't good. Super woke government. I mean, in Donald Trump's first term, there was the renegotiation of what was NAFTA, became USMCA.
Yeah.
I remember... I love some of the laws that you guys have. Like when the president is given fast track authority on trade agreements, Congress requires him to publish the trade objectives. Like, what are you trying to get out of this deal?
Sure.
And you guys were like, we want more access for this. We want more access for that. Justin Trudeau wanted gendered language in the deal. He had four things. One of them was about the environment. One of them was about Indigenous affairs. One was environment, and I forget the fourth. But yeah, he wanted to make sure the gendered language was in there. And I'm like, why not more access for our producers, our beef producers, our pork producers? We sell a lot of meat to you guys. What about stronger language on making sure that the auto parts that all three countries make that go into the cars we all assemble, that they're actually from parts made here? No, he had no interest in that, gendered language. So that's the guy that we've had in charge. Trump trolling him on the 51st state, I think, helped push him out the door. He was already highly unpopular. We've had this guy named Pierre Poilievre, conservative, Originally from Western Canada, Calgary guy, but been in Ottawa a long time now. I've known him for 20 plus years. He'd be a fantastic prime minister. But you know, what do they say? What are politicians worried about? Events, dear boy, events. And Justin Trudeau leaving sparked this leadership race. Got Mark Carney, used to be Bank of Canada governor, kind of like the equivalent of being Fed chair. Then he became Bank of England governor. Then he was advisor to Michael Bloomberg and Stripe and companies like this all over the place. And for whatever reason, he's left these multi-million-dollar jobs to take a shot at a job that pays $300,000. Well, the Conservatives went from having about a 20-point lead to Carney being just ahead of them in the latest poll if he becomes Liberal leader. Yeah.
Okay, so let's break down these guys because Poilievre's got some airtime for me on the show. He kind of had a glow up. He kind of changed his image. He started to lift weights. He looks super cool now, which has not always been. He's been around for a while. But
so we used to go to the same gym, and he kept going. And I have obviously stopped going. So he's been jacked for a long time. People just didn't notice it.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, he got rid of the glasses, got contacts, fixed his hair, better styling clothes.
Good hair. He's got good flow going.
Yeah.
So, but this sometimes gets our hopes up because we're very visual and we're all in America. We're obsessed with the cultural elements of politics. It always have been. I know I'm part of this in a major way, and it gets your hopes up. But do we feel like he's got the clarity of vision to be able to, if he can win somehow, to be able to work with a Trump, or is it going to be one of these things where he's trying to push back and play up the nice elements of Canadians' personae that we kind of don't need right now? We need to crack some skulls at the moment, figuratively speaking.
Well, he's the only one that I've heard articulate a real plan for what we need to do. I watched Trump's inaugural address, and my mind was blown as I listened to him talk about what he's going to do.
Yeah.
And I immediately wrote a column where I pointed out, I said, look, tariffs are a threat to our economy. We're highly integrated. This will hurt. If it's 25%, that'll hurt big time. But look at everything else Donald Trump wants to do to the Canadian or to the American economy: the deregulation, faster permitting for electrical generation, faster permitting for pipelines, allowing fracking, all of that. He's going to unleash your economy. You guys should be in a boom in no time. And if we don't do similar steps, we're screwed no matter what, even if we don't get the tariffs. You guys will leave us in the dust. And if we stick on the Justin Trudeau route, huge unemployment. I described it, used Ross Perot's old line. There'd be a giant sucking sound south, except instead of going to Mexico, it's all going to you guys. Poilievre's got a plan that will actually, start allowing LNG export. This is how woke Trudeau is.
Liquid natural gas.
Yeah, liquefied natural gas.
Yeah.
So Germany, shortly after the war in Ukraine starts, they buy a lot of gas from Russia. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz comes to Canada and asks to buy gas. He's like, we would like to, can you guys set up an liquefied natural gas export terminal? We need gas. We need to get off Putin's gas. Trudeau said there's no business case for it. He said, no, we won't sell it to you. Germany built, just a couple of months, they built an import terminal. We've had companies trying to get export permits and permits to build these terminals for years, and he keeps saying no. So that would be great. I mean, that would take away Putin's money. But China and India are on coal, and if we were selling them liquefied natural gas to replace coal, we would reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, which is what Trudeau is obsessed about. We would reduce them by more than all of Canada's emissions. Right.
Wow.
So he should be doing that because he's obsessed with greenhouse gas emissions. But he's so obsessed that he says we shouldn't be exporting it. We shouldn't be selling it. We shouldn't be using it anywhere. So he'd rather them be on coal than use our product. Poilievre has an actual vision for unleashing the Canadian economy, partnering with the United States, but also doing things that not only Donald Trump, but every president has asked for in my lifetime. And that is beef up your defense. Take border security seriously. He's got an actual plan for doing that. He flew up to the Arctic and announced that there would be won't be a full-on Air Force base, but there'll be a landing strip. There will be an area for F-35s to land up there. That there would be a new naval deep water port in the area. That he would, increase defenses in so many ways. In Canada, we got a lot of stupid people who just like being angry at Orange Man bad. Mm-hmm. Barack Obama stood on the floor of our House of Commons. He gave a speech to a joint session of our House and Senate. And he said that we need you guys to boost defense spending. Of course we didn't. We haven't been serious on defense in decades.
Right. That's a really interesting history. I had forgotten about that.
Yeah, Poilievre's got the plan to actually do these things. What I keep trying to tell people is the Biden administration was annoyed with us on defense. They were annoyed with us on fentanyl and the border. They just didn't do anything about it. Well, they did stop cooperating with us. I'm sure you've seen the Navarro story about kicking Canada out of Five Eyes.
Yeah, of course.
The Biden administration of several law enforcement departments and agencies stopped cooperating with Canada because they didn't feel that some of our agencies could be trusted. The difference between Biden and Trump is yelling at us to do something and threatening us with consequences if we don't.
Yeah. Okay. So what do you attribute any retreat in the polls that he's had? Because it feels like it's not just a departure of Trudeau that's necessary for Canada. It's the departure for the sort of generic European style globalist liberalism that's really in retreat throughout the whole West.
So people look at Mark Carney, and if you haven't seen what he looks like, are you old enough to remember the show Bewitched?
Vaguely, yeah. It was on Nick at Night when I was a kid, so I saw a few of them.
Yeah, he could play one of the Darrens on Bewitched. It's kind of vague, generic banker look. Call up Central Casting, get me a leader.
He really does look like you cast a banker in some sort of for a non-speaking role in a commercial that airs on the Golf Channel. Like that is sort of sort of his vibe.
That's a good description. So yeah, I think we're facing this economic threat. And people look at their two resumes and they say, well, he's been a central banker. He must know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, look at his policies. Don't look at his Wikipedia page. The guy wants to put he wants to fight Donald Trump's tariffs, but he wants a carbon border adjustment put in. Now, there's perfect bureaucrat BS, right? What's a carbon border adjustment? It's a carbon tariff. Any country that doesn't have a climate plan good enough for him, he wants to put a carbon tariff on. So that would mean any import from the United States. How well do you think that's going to go over in Washington? The Democrats will be outraged at that, never mind the Republicans.
Yeah.
It's just ludicrous. But that's his view. If your climate plan's not good enough, which means having a carbon tax, they're going to put that on. Mexico has kind of half a carbon tax. China has none. Our three biggest trading partners, the U.S., China, Mexico.
Right. Okay. So what I want to do, Brian, I want to talk about, you fired off a tweet that was really nailed, I think, something I've been thinking about and have not explored. Are we calling it tweets still, even though it's on X? Or are we just
I'm calling them posts now.
We're calling them posts now. It's just going to be tough to adjust. Musk named his kid X also, so it's like super. They just trying to make everything as much as confusing as possibly can. Tweet was fine. It was annoying, but it was fine. We at least knew what we were talking about. All right, I'm going to read it. Yes, let's talk about losing our sovereignty. China has been undermining it for years. They've helped pick our next government. They run their transnational crime group and secret police stations inside Canada. Can we get some outrage here? This is exactly what I've been thinking about with regards to Canada, is that China's tried to make Canada a tributary state in a lot of ways. They have their, as you say, transnational crime groups, secret police stations, and it feels like that this was treated as a secondary issue, and Trump starts talking tough, and then all of a sudden everyone's hair is on fire. Can you give us some of that history of China's infiltration into Canada?
Well, just like with you guys, it goes back decades. This is what they try and do. They infiltrate. They're doing war without shooting.
Yes, exactly.
So they try and infiltrate governments, businesses, academic institutions. We had Huawei sponsoring universities across the country for all kinds of research. We've had political parties infiltrated. We know that in the last 2 federal elections in Canada, that China has interfered to try and help Justin Trudeau secure victory. We had a national public inquiry on that, and so a judge put in charge, hearings held. Most of the juicy stuff was kept secret. There was a plot uncovered of 11 different candidates. Now, they were divided between the 2 parties because this is how China operates. They don't target just one. 11 candidates in the Toronto area. A claim of $250,000 distributed to various candidates through an intermediary from the Chinese consulate to these local elections. Most of them were liberals. Some of them were conservatives. We don't know who the 11 names are. They won't release it. And we could be heading into a new election as soon as Mark Carney secures the Liberal leadership. So they've infiltrated us in so many ways. They infiltrated our level 4 biolab. This is the top lab in Canada for studying infectious diseases, for studying viruses, weaponization of any biologics. That gets done there. You guys have a few of them. This is our top lab. They had 2 Chinese nationals infiltrate the place, and they were working with the little place you may have heard of, the Wuhan Institute of Virology. They were sending stuff back.
That's where you're supposed to pause and let me guess, Brian, so I could guess it right and sound extra smart for the audience.
Yeah, sorry.
Of course it's Wuhan, there. Of course.
So, look, they've infiltrated us in so many ways. And the secret police stations, they had those going on in the United States as well.
Yeah, we had 7 or so at least. We had some in Minnesota, right in Tim Walz's area. That was in the news pretty recently.
But you guys busted them and charged people.
Sure.
You sent them home. We had our, once it was exposed, and I think ours hit the news before yours. I think that's the way it worked. These are not regular police stations. They're called that because Chinese agents go and, like, I visited a few of them here. One was in a restaurant, one was in a corner store. It would just be someone who's working there, planted there by the Chinese government, and local Chinese immigrants start making noises, saying anything bad about Beijing. They drop by and they say, "Nice home you got here. Nice family you've got back in China. It'd be a shame for something to happen." I mean, they're really intimidation stations. But we just let them go on. The government was called out on it, and Justin Trudeau denied they were real. Our national police, the RCMP, they denied that it was happening. People showed the evidence, and then they said, "Oh, but they're going to close down soon." They never did.
Okay, so then the best question any journalist can ask: why? Why does Canada tolerate all this?
Somebody's got to be on the take. We don't know who. We don't know. Obviously Trudeau and his Liberal Party have been beneficiaries of this. He came to power with a lot of popularity in 2015, but in the last 2 elections, he's gone down and he's barely squeaked through a win. So, is that why he's turning a blind eye to the money laundering going on in Vancouver? I mean, the money laundering for the triads is so bad in Vancouver that, as a colleague of mine, journalist up here called Sam Cooper, who's done a lot of work on this, he revealed that it's called the Vancouver model of how you bring money into the country, you put it through a casino, you buy a home, you pay the mortgage off with continuing to use that model. We've had a huge problem with real estate overvaluations because of the Chinese triads laundering money through real estate in Toronto and Vancouver. I mean, this is horrible for the Canadian population, but nobody is cracking down on it. So, this is why another reason that the Liberals have to be tossed, and we have to get Poilievre in there, because I think he would actually do something. He wants to crack down on the fentanyl trade that's going on, the super labs that are showing up, all of that.
So Trudeau's not going to do anything. Trudeau's on the take. Is there any media accountability before we get to any political accountability, which is hopefully beginning to take shape? But what does the media think of this? Do you feel like you're a voice in the wilderness here, or is there anyone on your side?
There's a few, and some are in legacy media outlets. So, one of the oldest papers around in Canada, the Globe and Mail, it's a pretty staid type of operation, but they've done a lot of work on the political interference. Some of my colleagues, I work for the biggest chain of newspapers in the country, and some of my colleagues in Vancouver have done great work on the money laundering. But it hasn't gone away. The casinos, I believe, in Vancouver are even owned by the government, by the socialist NDP government in British Columbia, and they've been called out on it, and nothing has really happened. So, perhaps they're on the take. Maybe they're afraid of these vicious, nasty, violent gangs. I'm not sure, but there has been some media attention. As I said, this guy, Sam Cooper, he runs a Substack called The Bureau, does a ton of work on it. And then there, some online outlets, but most people just look past it. It's part of why the main media reaction in Canada to anything Trump has said is that's not true. We don't look at ourselves. We're not reflecting on what's happening. The spike in border crossings, that's real, but most Canadian journalists will say it's not because our government says it's not. The fentanyl stuff, that's real. That's happening. I've had government officials confirm it to me from Canada. But because officially the government says it's not happening, most media say, well, Donald Trump's lying. And so, you get to issues like China's infiltration and China's part in this, they don't want to look at it.
Right.
I mentioned Huawei earlier, just before you asked the next question. There's great evidence of how malicious China's infiltration can be. Huawei basically grew out of the corpse of Nortel, which was our original Bell company here in Canada. And Nortel was a tech giant selling around the world all through the 90s and 2000s. China got their spies in there, stole everything, built their own company. And Nortel's now gone. It was a staple of pension plans for every granny across the country, and the stock price just collapsed about 15, 20 years ago. And the company collapsed. Huawei grew out of it.
Wow. Okay, so I want to take a look at, from American perspective, I want to take a look at the literal and the figurative of it. It's always a mistake to look at Trump's moves as literal. We've all made that mistake in the past. I think me fewer than some others in my field of journalism here out in the States, but I do want to take what I think is the biggest thing that's happening, which is I think Trump's moves geopolitically, diplomacy-wise, are almost all connected to China. I think that cracking down the Mexican cartels is sending a signal to China to stop making fentanyl components that end up getting shipped by the cartels in the United States. I think that his maneuvering in Ukraine has to do with getting rare earths to counter China. I think that him working directly with Russia on a number of issues is designed to pull Russia away from the Sinosphere. I think this is everything Trump is doing is China related. And I think him imposing tariffs on Canada and threatening to make you guys the 51st. And in my opinion, I think it'll be two states. I think it'll be 51st and 52nd states. So we could talk about that next. But I got a feeling you're vibing with me on this point that it really is all about China. But I just want to get your thoughts on my big thesis here.
Yeah, I don't think you guys want us, by the way. Remember that Quebec, one of our provinces, is one of the intolerable
we're taking
acts.
2/3. We're leaving the Liberals.
It was one of the intolerable acts and one of the reasons for your revolution in 1776. So I'm not sure you want us. I think it is all about China. And I've tried to explain that to people. Why does he want Greenland? This makes no sense. I mean, the average Canadian commentator, even for the ones that are supposedly the best and brightest, and like you, I don't work for one of the approved outlets. Popular, but not approved by the smart set.
Right.
They just say Trump's a madman.
Misty, can we add that to the show notes for every single show? Popular but not approved. I like that. That's great branding.
Well, we've both got big audiences, and but the establishment media, it's a different game, right?
Yeah, it's a different game.
They sit there and they scream, well, this makes no sense. Why is he doing it? Why is he attacking Panama? He's not attacking Panama. He wants China's ports or China's control of the ports out of there. He wants China's control of Canada gone. I mean, there is a worry. about China's incursions into the Arctic. You go back 15 years, President Wu was in power, and he was coming to Canada for a state visit with, Prime Minister Harper. And they planted a story just before he arrives in Chinese English media that China is an Arctic adjacent nation, and because they have 20% of the world's population, they should have 20% of the resources under the Arctic. And that's something that Harper smartly rejected.
Right.
Trudeau tries to make it seem like the Arctic is there for everybody. No, it's ours. Well, it's yours as well. You have part of it with Alaska, some of your territories. We have a big part of it. And then you got Greenland, controlled by Denmark. So China wants to get in there. They want to drill, baby, drill. They want to extract resources. Well, if we can't control it, they will be able to do that. And that is why Trump is angry about our lack of defense spending, the fact that we haven't been serious. And so I've described how we've been living as a country the last several years as, that kid that graduates school but then stays in mom and dad's basement and won't, get a real job. We've kind of been living like that. And
60-year seniors.
Yeah, and now Trump is screaming at us, go get a real job. Take yourself seriously.
Sure. So what is the reaction overall? And I'm not talking about for the media. We know the media is obviously very negative, but Trump throws these tariffs out there and he starts making jokes like calling Trudeau Governor Trudeau, which is hysterical. It's hysterical. Let's admit it. It's hilarious. So what do people really think of this? Is there any talk that Trump has got a good point? Is there talk that maybe we should join America somehow? Maybe literally, maybe figuratively. Is there, what is really, you think, just where are the people at, Brian?
They're totally against it. There's a small minority that would say yes. About 80% in some polls, though, have said no. And there's always this thin veneer with an awful lot of Canadians that I've never understood of defining themselves against America. And we saw Trudeau do that when he went down to the States. And he, what did he do when he goes to Washington to try and mend fences? He goes and speaks with Jen Psaki. Yeah. That'll win you favors with Trump.
Yeah, right.
He did an interview with Jake Tapper. So two broadcasters that are former Democratic aides. I have a lot of time and respect for Tapper. He's fine. But talking to Jen Psaki to make the case against tariffs, what an idiot. But during the interview, he said, we define ourselves as not American. No, that's not how we do. But there is too much of that. And so, we've gone from Trudeau saying we're a post-national state with no core identity and built on white supremacy, and a lot of people buying into that, to all of a sudden everyone's walking around screaming about beavers and geese and will attack the Americans. It's a really, really weird vibe right now that I'm not enjoying. Most of us have American friends, cousins, relatives somewhere.
Sure.
But there's a lot of anger right now over this. And I think that's part of what's driving support away from Poilievre. They see him as maybe too close to Trump. He's not. I don't think they've never met. They're not the same. But there's just a lot of anger over this and a lot of worry and not enough. Okay, what does he want? Because as you say, don't take him literally. Try and, interpret it. They're taking him literally. And I've been called a traitor for just trying to understand.
Yeah, that's the first move, is that once you even try to parse what he's really doing, then you get attacked. And that's why you got to insulate yourself for an outlet like Breitbart, so that I can just say what I want and I'll be okay.
Yes, I don't care.
Yeah,
I keep doing it. But it's we carry Ben Shapiro's columns in the Toronto Sun. I've been attacked for the fact that we're publishing Ben Shapiro writing about Trump. Well, you guys get Trump. I mean, Why did I go interview Steve Bannon? Same thing. He gets Trump. You get Trump. We should all be talking to people that understand Trump and the America First movement and try and understand the America First movement.
This is one of the things that's always blown my mind is how the media would rather talk amongst themselves about us rather than ever talk to us, because a lot of us know how to be a guest in an interview. It's not, we don't bite. Most of us aren't mean. Most of us kind of like the idea of reaching new people. So it could be really civil and exciting, but they're really afraid to actually hear what we value, because what ends up happening is we sound reasonable. This happened a bit for me. I got a couple of mainstream interviews in 2016, 2017 when Trump won. And they never turned into regular things. And I think it's specifically because I don't sound crazy. If I sounded crazy, I think they'd have me back so they could make fun of me afterwards.
But I think the fact before Trump, I remember going to your great Breitbart parties during CPAC and talking about it. And people said, "You talk to Breitbart?" Yeah, I've written for Breitbart.
Yeah.
I pleasure to have met the late great Andrew. You guys are a great organization. But you talk to Breitbart? Yes.
And that's the move that they should make, because we would actually give them a fair shake. So some of them have admitted this, because we clip a lot of left-wing commentators and without analysis. And a lot of it is just to show you it's a Rorschach test. We're not taking them out of context. We provide full context. Now, we think it's insane, and they know we think it's insane, what they're saying, but they're at least happy not to be parsed and snipped, and that's always been an approach we've taken. People who pay attention are aware of that, but for whatever reason, people don't want to do that mental gymnastics that maybe the people who are disagreeing with us might actually have good ideas and are not just lunatics. They prefer just to cast us as lunatics and then move on, which is
because
not
our
going
American
well for them.
media coverage is so bad here in Canada. I've looked at the numbers. You guys have a sizable following in this country from people who want to get a non-lunatic version of American news.
Sure. We do incredibly well on our SiriusXM shows. We have huge Canadian listenership because there's the satellite hits Canada. And I'm always flattered by that. But it also makes sense to me because we are providing what's real. We're not misleading anyone. So it's just because we'd be out of business if we did. The second we do, there's some sort of government-funded fact checker who's on our case that is trying to put us out of business. So it's one of the silver linings of being harassed all the time is that you have to hold yourself to an even higher standard. But Brian, where do you think this goes over the next few months? Because I'm a little less optimistic after talking to you today. I mean, I want to see Poilievre get in. I want to see some sort of arrangement where you guys keep your border secure. You start keeping China more at bay, and then we can go back to being partners in this hemisphere. But now it's feeling a little funky now.
Well, I'm glad you used that word, partners. We haven't been a reliable partner.
Yeah.
And if you take any sensible evaluation of the Trudeau government, you would come to that conclusion. But now, because of this fake patriotism that's sprung up in response to what's happening, people want to say, oh, no, everything's great. So what happens? Look, the Liberals hold their weird leadership contest on March 9th, and believe it or not, despite not being elected by the public, if Mark Carney wins it, he will become our prime minister. He won't have a seat in the House of Commons. He will never have been voted on in an actual election. He'll be selected by his party, and he will become prime minister. The way the polls are looking now, I think they will call a snap early election sometime in March, because the less Canadians know about Mark Carney and his inability to handle tough questions in the political sphere, the less they know about him, the better he will perform.
So that's the Kamala Harris strategy. Is the longer she had to campaign, the worse she was going to do. So that was so they acted like, oh, she was a real setback. She didn't have very long to campaign. No, the more we know about her, the more we're like, oh yeah, she's an empty suit. So
I was in Phoenix when she was down there campaigning in October, and shortly after she left, the numbers turned in Arizona.
Yeah,
so
exactly. I always feel like I get very lucky in what I can observe before the rest of the public. But she's Californian, so I followed her career, and she's not bright. She's not a bright person, and I've never said that about Joe Biden. I don't think Joe Biden's Einstein, but I don't think he's a dumb guy. Obviously, Obama's not a dumb guy. I'm not trying to attack her. She's just not bright. She's just not, and not bright enough for that job, especially to outmaneuver Trump, who's proven to be the virtuoso politician of the century. And it's like she wasn't going to beat him. And their best chance was to sell a lie about her for a short period of time. So you're saying they could run that exact playbook and perhaps win?
Yeah, because people will just look and say, well, he was economist. He went on Jon Stewart. He launched his campaign to become Canada's prime minister on Jon Stewart's Daily Show, where they went with the lie that he helped save two economies, that he was the savior of the Canadian economy in the 08-09 financial crash, and then Britain post-Brexit, neither of which is true. So, but people won't look into that. You know how most people are and how they vote. And so they'll just say, oh, this guy's good. We'll elect him. He can protect our economy. He won't. He is a green zealot. I mentioned the carbon tariff he wants to put on. He wants to jack up industrial emissions taxes on, everyone's worried about steel and aluminum tariffs. Well, what do you think that doubling that carbon tax on the steel mill is going to do? It's going to shut it down, or production's going to move from my hometown of Hamilton, Ontario, to the same company owns mills in Detroit, in Ohio. They'll move the production stateside. So, if that happens, you don't have a reliable partner with your northern neighbor again. If Poilievre gets in, and I think he could beat Carney in a general election because Pierre's a lifelong politician. He's a smart guy. He is quick on his feet, and Carney is not. So if you get Poilievre in, you've got a reliable partner as your northern neighbor again. Not a pushover, but not someone who's antagonistic, not someone who's going to let the weeds grow through the fence, you might say. He's going to take care of the problems here at home. He's been talking about the fentanyl issue for a year or two now, not on the cross-border thing, but on how devastating it's been in our cities. Because we're just like you. Whether it's a big town or a small town now, fentanyl is everywhere. And we've lost more people to fentanyl, for about 49,000 people. That's more than we lost in the Second World War.
Amazing. Brian, appreciate all this information. I would like to do this more regularly so you can keep me posted, especially as this trade war or whatever you want to call it plays out and we move closer towards elections in Canada. So it is all of our hope that you guys get some sort of sane conservative governance, that you understand the reality of what Trump is asking for, which is really helping us with the border, not helping us get some of those natural resources going, helping us keep China at bay. And then we can be best buds. We could play competitive hockey games, and we can all be very happy.
If memory serves, you're a Celtics fan, right?
No,
I thought you were.
You confused me with someone else. No,
I last Raptors game I was at, they beat the Celtics.
Yeah, well, the Celtics are they good this year? I don't keep up with the pro sports as much as I used to. I replaced pro sports with children, which I highly recommend.
I went through that stage of life.
Yeah, so but then you're back, then you watch the pro sports with the kids. So I'm almost getting there with the kids, because I got my second son likes the Dodgers, so I got my first little interest from kids.
There we go.
So, but you're one of those snowbirds who's making all the golf prices in Palm Springs go up. I figured
I don't golf. So. I've got to take up golfing now that I'm spending a lot of time in Palm Springs.
Yeah. So you told me. So this is where my parents live, and the pricing just goes through the roof whenever it gets too cold in Canada, because you guys can't hang up there all year. You got to come down. And but I will say you're all very friendly. I golf with a lot of Canadians. That's a fact the audience does not know about me, is that just by nature, if you golf in Palm Springs, you golf with Canadians. It's just part of your life. So
well, we'll have to connect now that I know you're there a lot. We'll have to connect when I'm down and grab a bite along the Strip.
Yeah, that would be cool. One of the coolest parts of California, which is saying something. Brian, it is terrific. Let me plug your stuff. So your column comes out in this. Is it regular? The daily day people can look for it
every day.
Every day. Oh my goodness. So
I write a lot.
You're burning and turning. And if you go to Brian's X, you can see more of where to find him. But you can go to brianlilley.com, Brian with an I, Lilly with two L's. And keep up with everything he does. Just terrific journalist and a good friend of ours who's got a keen eye for what's coming next in the news. So thanks, Brian. Appreciate you.
Thank you.